Hello. This lecture is about the theory of health as expanding consciousness, which is a theory developed by a nurse named Margaret Newman. And basically, according to Margaret Newman, a health crisis is not necessarily a negative event or even an undesirable event, as strange as that may seem, but she thinks that illness can provide people with opportunities for growth and change. And in order to do this, she uses the metaphor of the ocean and talks about the explicate order of our lives, which she says are the tangible elements of our existence as seen through the five senses. So it's how we think about our world and our world as we perceive it. And she says that these are the waves of our life. And this will make sense in a minute, but so that's the explicate order. And she also talks about the implicate order, which are patterns below the surface. So these would be the water current. So we look at our lives and what's going on, and those are the waves. That's the stuff that we can see. But underneath that, there are other things going on, which again are the water currents. So the tangible seems real, but what's really going on in our lives is a result of what's going on underneath the implicate order. So we can see the waves, but we don't understand the cause of them until we understand what's going on underneath. And a health event makes big waves. And it's important to not just look at those waves, but it's important to look at what's causing those waves. And she talks about when we have a health event or a health crisis, she says, each of us at some time in our lives is brought to a point where the old rules do not work anymore. When what we have considered progress does not work anymore. We have done everything right, but things still do not work. And think about your own life if you've ever had a situation like that, either as a result of a health crisis or some other crisis. And she talks about during a health crisis, if we hang in there through the uncertainty and ambiguity, we can see the patterns at work in our lives, and this can be a liberating experience for us, even though we think of a health crisis only in negative terms. She provides the example of a woman who neglects herself for the good of her family and those around her, to the point she neglects her own spiritual growth because her life is full of obligations. So, because of this, the woman has a stroke. Well, so there's the stroke, and you can treat the stroke, right? However, what's really important is what's going on in the water currents. That it's an opportunity for her to understand that she needs to say no to people, that she needs to learn to delegate, that she can't be all things to all people. So in that regard, she can understand more about herself and her own spiritual development as a result of the stroke. So that would be an example of what Margaret Newman is talking about. Couple other quotes. Transcendence of the limitations of disease does not necessarily mean more freedom from the disease. It does mean more meaningful relationships and greater freedom in a spiritual sense. These factors are considered an expansion of consciousness. So it is an opportunity for us to take a look at our lives and see what really matters, and to have more meaningful connections and relationships with other people, and to change our lives on a deep fundamental level. So basically, I'm just going to go through a few bullet points with you as far as the theory goes. But Newman sees health and illness as not separate, but part of an integrated whole. So again, the waves and the patterns underneath. Individuals can change through the experience of what we call illness and find meaning as a result of traversing a period of disorganization and uncertainty. So all the uncertainty and the chaos that comes with illness, once you kind of work through that, you can find greater meaning in your life. She also says that humans are not unitary. We can't be divided into parts. And the self is a self-organizing field within a larger field. So we're really not separate from our environment. We're not separate from our relationships from other people. We all affect one another, and we need to understand that in order to care for ourselves. So the person and the environment and what's in the larger environment are all part of one thing. So remember, there's the implicate order, and those are the unseen patterns, including disease, that affects the explicate order. And again, that's the tangible elements of our lives, what we see. And illness is a manifestation of health and can be meaningful and viewed with a pattern. And so as a result of illness, you can perhaps find a new self-definition. So awareness that old ways of thinking and acting no longer work. The old view plus the new view equals the new self definition. And how have you seen that in some of the discussion boards that we've already taken a look at? What about the articles that we read on the different types of stories? The restitution stories, the stories of chaos, and the stories of quest. Quest and expanding consciousness are relatively similar in that they talk about illness does provide us with a new opportunity for seeing the world and our place in the world in different ways. So just got a couple questions for you to consider. Have you learned something valuable about yourself as a result of a health crisis? If you're rather young and you haven't had any health crisis, perhaps you can look at what's gone on with other people in your lives that you know about, or any type of crisis. What can caregivers or loved ones do to help people evaluate their life circumstances when an illness occurs? Newman talks about that, in her opinion, that's the role of the nurse. She says the role of the nurse is to help clients get in touch with the meaning of their lives by identification of the patterns of relating. So for her, a nursing intervention is kind of a non-intervention in that you try to help people take a look at these larger patterns in their lives. And the final question is, in what ways are your health and outward everyday life, so the explicate order, influenced by underlying factors? That is the implicate order. So spend some time thinking about these things and see if you can grow and learn from it as well.